Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
Now, nearly 750,000 eggs from Dutch farms linked to a contamination scare have been sent to the UK, far more than was first estimated. Well, Dutch investigators have detained 2 men suspected of being involved in the illegal use of pesticide at poultry farms. Let's go live now to central London and speak to the Director of Policy at the Food Standards Agency, Steve Wern. And Mr. Wern, first of all, if you will, what kind of impact will this have on supermarkets and consumers here?
Well, as you say, we think that around 700,000 eggs have now been brought into the UK from implicated farms in Belgium and the Netherlands. That's still a very small proportion of the number of eggs we consume. We consume around 10 billion eggs each year. And these won't be whole shell eggs, so they're not the sort of eggs that people buy in the supermarket in boxes of 6 or 15. They've been mixed with other eggs and incorporated into a range of products, sandwich fillers and so on. There's no risk, unlikely to be any risk at all, to public health, and that's our assessment and the basis of our assessment. But because this substance simply shouldn't be there, we've been working closely with the industry to withdraw affected products, and a full list of those withdrawn products is on our website.
So if they've gone into a variety of food products, how do you actually track down where they are?
Well, that's precisely what we've been doing, with great help from the food industry, since we first learnt of the import of these eggs into the UK back just on Saturday. So we track back, we identify where the eggs have come from, we track forward to the products they've been used in, and that's allowed us to publish the list that we now have.
And if you will, just remind of the background. How was it possible that these eggs were contaminated in the first place?
Well, the substance that we're talking about is fipronil. It's an insecticide. It's used in a range of applications, but isn't authorised for use in or near food-producing animals. So the indications so far are that it was used and mixed to cleaning compound that was used in poultry hatcheries, and that's how it got into the eggs, through this unauthorised use. And we think people deserve food they can trust, which is why, although we think there's no risk to public health, where we find fipronil in eggs, we want those products withdrawn.
So you say there's no risk to the public, but what are the implications, the side effects? What can they possibly be?
Well, at the levels that are found in eggs, there wouldn't be any. Our toxicologists have said that you'd need to have 10,000 times the dose you'd get from eating any of these eggs to have an effect. So while that's reassuring in terms of there not being any effect on people's health, we think it's still worrying that it took so long for us to get the full picture from other European food agencies of what was going on, and to be able to put in place these steps that we now have with the cooperation of the food industry to withdraw affected products from UK supermarket shelves.
OK, Steve Wern from the Food Standards Agency, thanks very much for your time this afternoon.
Thank you.
The Food Standards Agency says that some 700,000 imported eggs that are potentially contaminated with a pesticide have entered the food chain here. That's a massive increase over the original estimate of 21,000. Several supermarkets have withdrawn some egg-based products, but the FSA says they're unlikely to pose any risk to public health. Emma Simpson reports.
Dumped and discarded, this Belgian farmer has had to destroy not just his eggs, but his hens too. The produce contaminated with fipronil, an insecticide which is banned for use in the food chain. But that's where it's ended up, on a potentially massive scale.
Vos œufs ne sont plus commercialisables pendant 3 mois.
You cannot put your eggs on the market for 3 months, and so I took the decision to kill the animals because it is really too expensive. The company which came to clean and treat the red lice with a so-called organic product really used fipronil. We've all been fooled by the seller. We're all a victim of him.
He's not alone. More than 100 farms are affected in the Netherlands too, although this one's in the clear. And millions of eggs have now been pulled from supermarket shelves on the continent. The reason? Fipronil may be popular for getting rid of fleas on pets, but it can be dangerous to humans. Here in the UK, we produce our own eggs, but also import them. And some of the eggs from affected farms have ended up here too. Now, we're not talking about the kind of fresh eggs like these that we buy off the supermarket shelves. The affected eggs went into processed foods like sandwich fillings and salads. Just a few days ago, the Food Standards Agency said 21,000 eggs were affected. Today, that shot up to 700,000. Sounds a lot, but that's just 0.007% of all the eggs we eat every year.
There's no reason why people should avoid eating eggs. Our assessment is that it's very unlikely there's any public health risk. But we think people deserve food they can trust, and that means not having food that has in it a substance that simply shouldn't be there.
4 supermarkets are withdrawing a limited number of products as a precaution, but others will already have been consumed. Yet another food scare, highlighting just how complex supply chains can be and how easily problems can spread. Emma Simpson, BBC News.
Now, 4 supermarkets have withdrawn egg sandwiches and salads from their shelves over fears they've been contaminated with an insecticide. The Food Standards Agency admitted that 700,000 eggs imported into Britain may have been affected. But questions are being asked about why it's taken so long to learn the full scale of the problem. It's alleged Belgian authorities were alerted in June, and the Dutch even earlier. The FSA insists, though, there is no cause for panic and the risk to human health is extremely low. Well, earlier I spoke to the chair of the FSA, Heather Hancock, and began by asking her how certain she could be about that.
We're really confident that the risk to public safety, to public health, is very low. All the evidence, all the science that we've looked at, the risk assessments show that. That's the view that we've formed. That's the view that we can absolutely rely on. You'd have to eat an incredible number of these contaminated eggs.
Well, how many eggs would you have to eat for there to be a risk to health?
Let's put it in the scale of something like 10,000. So
it's not going to happen.
We really want to get across. People do not need to be worried about public health. The reason that we're sharing the news today, that there are more eggs than we expected originally, is just in the spirit of openness and transparency. And we're withdrawing products that contain these eggs because this substance shouldn't be in them. That's a matter of public trust, not a matter of public safety.
There's an embarrassing problem here, though, isn't there? Because the Belgians knew about this issue in June. The Dutch knew about it last November. Why on earth do the Brits only know about it now?
So we were notified that a consignment had reached the UK over the weekend. That's when we found out. I think there'll be plenty of lessons to learn about how this incident has unfolded. I know that the Dutch and the Belgian authorities are already looking at that. We'll want to play our part in that lessons learned exercise to make sure that notifications in future are speedier and more effective.
You originally thought only 21,000 eggs were affected in the UK. Now you estimate 700,000. That's a massive discrepancy. What happened there?
So originally, let's go back to last week. Last week, we were told that there had been no imports from the affected farms into the UK.
You were told by whom?
By the Dutch. Over the weekend, it became clear, we were notified, formally notified, that a consignment of 21,000 eggs had arrived in the UK. As we started to investigate that, working with the industry, we've been able to establish with great industry cooperation that it's actually 700,000 eggs that have reached the UK. And those are the eggs that we've taken action on. So
you can't trust the Europeans is the moral of the story, isn't it?
I don't think that's the reason, the moral of the story at all, but there's clearly something has gone astray in this case.
It was a similar problem with the contaminated horse meat scandal. It seems to be that when food crosses a lot of borders, you kind of lose track of it, whether that's the fault of the EU regulations or the fault of the country of origin. Isn't there a problem there with importing food from across the world?
Well, there are systems that track and trace food as it's crossing borders.
Issue.
I think that the question is the point at which you know there's an issue with food and therefore you can get onto it and start to exploit those systems, find out where the food has gone. So I don't think there's an exact comparison at this stage that we can draw between the horse meat issue and this issue of fipronil in eggs. We don't yet know the extent to which there's criminality involved, for example, or any other action that's been taken. There's clearly going to be a lot to learn, but at the minute, our focus is on saying, yes, there's been a change in the number. Yes, it's 700,000 eggs in the UK. It's a tiny, tiny proportion of the 10 billion eggs that we eat in the UK every year. No one needs to be worried.
Heather Hancock, the chair of the FSA, talking to Cathy earlier. It is rather a big increase, to say the least, but it is now clear that the number of Dutch eggs imported to Britain with potential pesticide contamination has shot up from tens of thousands to hundreds of thousands. And whilst it was previously thought all the affected eggs had left the food supply, the Food Standards Agency now says they could be in supermarket even products with a use-by date into next week.
Across Europe, millions of eggs are being thrown away. A food safety scare that began in Holland is widening to more and more countries and affecting the UK far greater than was previously thought. Nearly 750,000 eggs illegally exposed to the pesticide fipronil have made it into the British food chain. In large quantities, the World Health Organization describes it as moderately hazardous. But the Food Standards Agency here deny we should be worried.
We are withdrawing these products because this substance, fipronil, shouldn't be in eggs. It's a matter of public trust in food. We're not recalling it because it's not safe. We're withdrawing it because it ought not to be there. And there is a difference, and people, I hope, will feel really assured about that.
Just a couple of days ago, we thought it was 21,000 eggs. Now we know it's 700,000. Should the public be worried that this is not going to be the limit? I mean, you got it wrong once before.
Well, I can't say that that's it, because our investigations quite rightly are continuing.
So far, 4 leading retailers have taken 11 packaged items containing egg off their shelves, including Sainsbury's ham and egg salad, Morrison's potato and egg salad, Waitrose's free-range egg mayonnaise deli filler, and the Asda spinach and egg snack pot. All 4 supermarkets say they're withdrawing the products purely on a temporary basis and as a precautionary measure. Indeed, most of that processed food, of which egg would have been just one ingredient, will already have been eaten. Eggs on our shelves are not believed to be affected, but authorities abroad are now testing the chicken bred for meat on the same Dutch farms over fears they too could have been contaminated.
People trust that when they buy something in a shop or a supermarket, or directly from a farmer, that they're getting something which is safe to eat. And this is just a reminder that we have to be very careful.
2 Dutch men have been arrested. Many hundreds of thousands of chickens may yet have to be culled. Richard Pallo, News at 10.